Packers, I'm going to be honest with you, Carmen.
Mm.
Feel like one of the more disrespected teams in the NFL right now
I
because
agree.
the Lions obviously are at the top of that division. We're talking about them as a potential Super Bowl team. The Vikings and how surprising their season was and them being right behind the Detroit Lions. People, okay, well, we talk about what a great surprise the Vikings are. And then people just go, Packers 9-3. Cool, whatever. What
There's
they're
been
having a
such a
fantastic season, especially since
yes.
Jordan Love has been healthy. So, as we do for every single game, let's talk about a matchup that matters. Talk to me about this. If you got Packers thoughts, I'd love to hear them. But then let's segue into a matchup that matters here for Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. No, it's with the Packers. It's just the drop off in interest in this team after everybody figured out last season that Jordan Love was it. They paid Jordan Love. It's like, all right, that's that. But in reality, the amount of adjustments that have needed to happen. I just skeeted it. Are we using skeet? I don't know if I should use that word. Blue sky. I posted
I
on
was
Blue
like,
Sky. People are calling them skeets.
I
I
was,
don't
yeah,
know.
I no.
We're just derailing everything today. I'm sorry.
I was like, is this a Little John and the East Side Boys reference? Because if so, no, we probably can't use that. But a Blue Sky
Skeet.
reference, yes, I think we
It's a
can.
Blue
I
Sky
think we can
reference.
somehow do that.
I posted it on Blue Sky. I think it was Blue Sky. Maybe it was Twitter. But the Coach of the Year odds came out, and Matt LaFleur was nowhere on that list. And I was like, I'm not saying that he should win, but he should at least be one of the guys we're talking about for Coach of the Year, given all the adjustments they've had to do with Jordan Love's injuries and what he was able to do with Malik Willis, and sometimes in the middle of a game. Not to mention, I mean, Matt LaFleur made a coaching change this offseason, bringing in Jeff Hafley as defensive coordinator. That has worked out really, really well. It's just the whole operation there, which is captained by Matt LaFleur, is going very smoothly. And there's such a lack of interest in the team, though, because I think it's like business as usual. The Packers are good again. Meanwhile, they still have one of the youngest rosters in the league. And I don't know. I really do agree with you, though. I just think the Packers are getting a little bit disrespected. But I guarantee you the Lions are not doing the disrespecting because they understand exactly who this Packers team is. They are very familiar with them. The matchup that actually matters, and it's not my one that I wrote down, but the matchup that actually matters is Detroit versus their own health, because the
Sure.
defense has gotten completely decimated. So it's Aaron Glenn trying to hide an ever-growing number of deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. Deficiencies meaning just injury related. This is a phenomenal defense. They've been able to adjust to the loss of Aiden Hutchinson early in the season beautifully. They've been blitzing a lot. And we finally are kind of getting the answer to how Zadarius Smith fits into all of this trade deadline acquisition. And then they get him. And I think we were all wondering, all right, is he going to get the Aiden Hutchinson treatment where you're just kind of isolating him, trying to get him one-on-one matchups on the outside and kind of let that be your pressure package? Or are you going to continue doing what you did once Aiden Hutchinson went down, which is blitz the hell out of opponents? And we've seen Aaron Glenn blitz the hell out of opponents. So that's the matchup that matters, because do you have the bodies to do that anymore? That's the big question. But I really do want to go to the opposite side of this to go more in depth on the Detroit receivers just against the Green Bay corners, who also have been dealing with their own set of injuries. And when you talk specifically about guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who lines up all over the offensive formation, fifth ranked PFF grade overall, 7 red zone touchdowns, which is tied for first with Terry McLaurin, 49 catches gaining a first down, also tied for first with Jamar Chase. And then you look at the receiving yards allowed in coverage by Packers corners, and Eric Stokes, who is kind of their number one guy right now, especially with Jair Alexander going in and out of the lineup, 300 yards so far. So you've got kind of guys at and around 300 yards given up in coverage. And you're like, okay, how is this going to factor in? How are they going to match up with Detroit's offense, given that they can really hurt you in all levels of your defense as well? That's the thing. It's like they've got Sam Laporta underneath. They've got Jahmyr Gibbs underneath. And then you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown that can stretch the field. You've got Jameson Williams that can really stretch the field.
Right.
That's kind of the matchup that I think is going to dictate how productive Detroit is and how much Green Bay is going to need to do to keep up with them.
Yeah, the plus factor for me is sort of a combination of however you view it. Is it a corner stepping up for Green Bay? Is it Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams themselves? Like somebody in that I think equation is the plus factor for me in this game. So I'm going to piggyback off of you there and kind of talk about that as my plus factor. But then when I think of the matchup that matters, normally we'll go one side of the ball versus the other, like an offensive line versus defensive line. You just mentioned a wide receiver group versus a corner. To me, the matchup that matters is Green Bay's offense versus Detroit's offense in the first half of this game, mainly in the first quarter, because I've been so impressed by the Packers and how well they have been able to start football games. Over the last month, the Packers are 5th in offensive grade in the first half. They are 1st in rushing grade in the first half, and they are 4th in points scored in the first half over the last 3 games. So 4th, that means that they're very high up on that list. The Detroit Lions, they are number 1. So these are teams, just a little bit higher. So these are 2 teams that know exactly what they want to do. And there is sort of an established identity at this point between these teams. And yet the other teams can't stop it. They're able to come out of the gate, especially on the ground. That's what I love about the Packers, how they're feeding Josh Jacobs and getting the run game involved. These 2 teams in particular have been very good over the last 4 or 5 games of dictating how the game is played. Because when you can come out and score, I don't want to say at will, but as high of a clip as the Packers and the Lions are, you dictate the tempo of the game. You put the other team on their heels. You force them to be the ones that are reacting to you. Okay, now if you're the other team, now we're down on the scoreboard. Does that mean we can't run as much? Does that mean we have to open it up a little bit sooner? Are we abandoning the run earlier than we want to? And yet the Packers and the Lions, they're able to really hit you in the mouth and just play exactly what their game is. These are 2 teams that don't get uncomfortable very often in the first half. Now they're going up against one another. So to me, it's a huge matchup that matters. Who can still start fast in this game? Or maybe it's an answer of both. Are we going to see a fireworks show in the first half? To me, that's really something to look out for. But who's the plus factor for you in this one?
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention too, both of these coaches are so good at making halftime adjustments. I mean, Dan Campbell, obviously kind of the CEO, head coach, but like Ben Johnson, really, really good at evolving his scheme in the second half, and making sure that they understand exactly what their opponents are going to do and trying to stay one step ahead of them, which is why they're productive pretty much all game long. And Green Bay's rushing offense, I can't say enough about. It's not even particularly Josh Jacobs, although obviously he's the engine of the rushing offense. But it's that ever since their bye week, Green Bay hasn't had a lot of tendencies in their run game. They're running different run schemes every game, it seems like. When coming out of the bye against the Bears, I think I said this last week, tons of duo, almost like exclusively duo in the run game. And then you look at a week, 2 weeks later, they're not running duo like that, or if at all. And so you're kind of matching your run scheme to what your opponent can do well or doesn't do well, rather, and trying to exploit that matchup, which again is another kind of emphasis on Matt LaFleur being coach of the year because of just all of these adjustments that are happening as the season goes on. My plus factor, though, is something that I noticed when a huge narrative, I think, around Jordan Love is that, all right, he's kind of this Brett Favre. He's got the Green Goblin mask on his shoulder. Like, he wants to take risks. And it's something that Matt LaFleur has addressed, saying we're not going to coach that out of him because a lot of times those risks pay off, right? So he has this like kind of gunslinger, high risk, high reward player reputation. And yet, I looked at the numbers. They don't support that at all. 13 turnover-worthy plays this season. That ties him with guys like Josh Allen and Jared Goff. Jared Goff, yes, he has interception game, but outside of that has been very good at taking care of the football this year. 3.7% turnover-worthy play percentage for Jordan Love. That ranks as like middle of the pack, 14th. So he's kind of like middle of the pack around quarterbacks. He's also suffered the 3rd most drops of any quarterback from this receiver core. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he wasn't consistently in the lineup, especially early, didn't really establish the rapport with his receivers again this season until later. And now you're seeing some of those drops kind of, the number is dwindling as the season goes on, and they're all more comfortable with each other. They've got a feel for the timing of everything, all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of this, and something that we haven't been giving a lot of credence to, is that his receivers are dropping catchable passes. And that's sometimes working in, like, I think there was a lot made about, especially early on, his interceptions were not his fault, at least a majority of them. They were either deflected, they were tipped, his receiver fell down, he didn't run the right route, that, and the other, where, yes, that shows up as an interception for Jordan Love, but it's not that it was a turnover-worthy play or that Jordan Love was putting the ball in harm's way. It was his receivers weren't there when he was expecting them to be there. And Jordan Love is so good at throwing with anticipation and trusting his guys. And now that, again, they've had more reps together with Jordan Love back in the lineup and healthy, this is when it's starting to pay off. But up until this point, I feel like he's gotten this reputation that he hasn't really deserved.
He is truly, I think the positives of being a gunslinger are certainly there for Jordan Love. But I just going back to our point of how we started this whole conversation, I just don't think the Packers are getting enough credit for what they're doing right now. Maybe people out there think differently, and I just haven't seen enough talk about the Packers, but certainly there's going to be no escaping it with these two divisional teams going up against each other on Thursday Night Football. And there's a huge game, right? I imagine what happens if Green Bay wins this game in Detroit.
Yes.
I mean, it vaults them to, okay, now,
seed.
All of a sudden they're a 10-win team, and the Detroit Lions drop a game, and now they're within, the Vikings and the Packers are then well within reach of not just winning the division, not just catching the Lions, but the number one overall seed. So for a lot of talk of like, oh, the Lions are playing fantastic, they're going to make the Super Bowl. Obviously they can, and they're a phenomenal football team, but the margin for error is still very small because of how well these other two teams are playing within the division. And I want to make sure the Packers get that love. So very excited for this game.
You add in the Eagles to that too. Yeah, Detroit wins this
for
game.
sure. Yeah.
They clinch a playoff berth. Detroit wins this. They clinch the playoffs. They're good. But you're right. The margin for error, for as dominant as Detroit has looked at parts of this season, they are not a lock for the number one overall seed. And like you contrast that with the AFC too, where the AFC is all but locked up at this point. It's completely different in the NFC, and the Lions really have zero margin for error and have to continue to win to secure that home field advantage and the first round bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.